Good evening. Today is Thursday, February 27th, 2025. It is now 5:30 p.m. and I will call the Salem Area Mass Transit District Board of Directors meeting to order. Will the clerk of the board please note attendance for a quorum? Okay, and just for the record, all board members are present and Director Carney is online. And now I'll pass it over to General Manager Pollock for our safety moment.
Great, thank you. So this evening, rather than share a safety moment, I'd like to talk about a safety event that we had a couple of weeks ago. And we're referring to the ice storm and the snow that happened a week and a half or so ago. I just want to take this opportunity to applaud the work of the EOC and the crew that's involved with that. When we make decisions to cancel service, it's usually the very last resort of a decision we have to make. We do not like having to cancel service because we know of the potential impact it takes on our riders, especially if the day has already started and trying to ensure that they get home. But I just wanted to share with the board, the EOC was hard at work, up early in the morning when necessary, assessing what's happening with conditions, and then making decisions based on the very best information we have. And ultimately, we did have to close down for a day and a half and then resume after the weather passed. Part of that was based on the imminent threat of danger from the National Weather Service of encouraging people not to drive. But I can tell you, we have, when these types of events happen, we have folks out in the field assessing what's going on. And in this case, even though our fixed route bus didn't run, we still ensured life safety trips from our paratransit service did occur. Because you can't reschedule dialysis. And so we provided around 26 rides or so, medical essential trips for those people. So even though we're not running, we are running behind the scenes, and we came back as soon as possible. So I just wanted to share that a lot goes into those decisions, and a lot happens to make that decision made. And so with that, my thanks to the EOC members and all the work that they did. And that concludes my safety moment.
Thank you very much. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole board here that we also very much appreciate all the hard work that all of our staff and our operators do every single day, and especially in such difficult times, and the people that need to go out there in the morning and check to see if the roads are drivable. I mean, we see that and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. So that'll move us into our announcements, changes to the agenda. I would like to note that under action items, so item 6, we will be moving item 6B up first. So we'll be going 6B, A, C, D. And we have no presentations. Did we have anybody sign up for public comment, or any members from the public that are present here or are online? Or on the phone? Nope. Okay. So that'll bring us to our consent calendar. Does anybody wish to pull an item or review an item on the consent calendar? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right. Moved by Holmstrom, seconded by Navarro. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And so that brings us to action items, and as stated, we'll go with action item 6B, adopt resolution 2025-02, rider and employee safety with regard to immigration status. General Manager?
Great, thank you. So I'll present the staff report this evening. So at the board's request, we have brought forth a resolution for adoption that affirms the district's commitment to providing a safe work environment for employees and a safe public transportation service for all riders regardless of immigration status in alignment with Oregon sanctuary laws. It's a fundamental responsibility of the district to ensure safe and reliable public transportation services that are accessible to all members of our community. And the proposed resolution establishes clear guidelines for protecting rider and employee confidential information while ensuring uninterrupted transit services. Key provisions of the resolution include the protection of rider and employee confidential information, direction of legal requests regarding passenger or employee information to the Chief Security Officer's Office for legal review, declining to collect information on or ask passengers about their citizenship status, immigration status, or country of birth, limiting access to facilities by federal immigration authorities to the same level as the general public, absent a judicial order or emergency, declining to remove riders for immigration enforcement purposes, absent a judicial order or emergency, partnering with community organizations serving immigrant communities, and training our staff on responding appropriately to immigration enforcement situations. The resolution reinforces the district's commitment to serving the entire community while complying with state laws and protecting constitutional rights. And so if the motion or the resolution is adopted tonight, beginning tomorrow, we will roll out a series of information. A memo from our chief safety officer will go to every employee discussing ICE audits, inspections, and activities on Cherriots property and what they are and what we should do. Our dispatch and customer service personnel will receive additional information on how to handle any situation that may arise. And every transit operator will receive a pocket card with information on what to do in the event an ICE agent does board their bus. The short version of all of this really is to be courteous, greet officers with professionalism, notify your supervisor so they can take the appropriate action and get our chief safety officer and staff involved and ensure calm throughout the ordeal. So with that, we are recommending that the board does adopt Resolution 25-02, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Yes, Director Davidson.
Thank you for the report, General Manager Pollock. I noticed in the resolution that there is the exception for the judicial order, which I would expect, and then or emergency. I expect that this resolution was poured over by our legal counsel. I'd love some clarity on what or emergency might entail or not entail.
Sure. Why don't we ask our attorney, he is on the line, if you could you introduce yourself and maybe answer that question?
Sure, folks. I'm Bradley Meyer from the law firm of Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt, and I added those two provisions that included emergency in the last draft, and they are both directly from the State Attorney General's guidance and their draft policy for policies like this and complying with the Oregon sanctuary laws, and so emergency is not defined. And a document like this, which is fairly broad to begin with, you don't want to go into too much detail or get too very, very specific. So in short, emergency is not here defined.
Go ahead.
One follow-up. In the event that a immigration agent was to assert that there is an emergency and that Cherriots was to dispute the fact of an emergency, how would you as legal counsel advise? I recognize that I'm asking you to weigh in on a hypothetical, but I'm trying to get a sense of the implications of this language.
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that question effectively. It's going to depend very much on the circumstances. My guess is that if ICE is going to be asking a driver, for example, to remove someone from the bus or to somehow assist in the removal of someone from the bus, it's not going to be on the basis of an emergency. it's going to be because they believe that someone is here illegally and they're trying to remove them. And that's not something that, absent a judicial order, anyone with the organization would have to comply with.
Thank you.
Director Carney?
Thank you, President Hinojosa. I really appreciate this resolution coming before the board, and I think protection of our riders and employees, is important to this board, important to our community, and important to our service. And I just had a question about something that's come up in the conversations that I have had around protected information is what are we collecting and where? And so I'm going to take the opportunity just to put it out there for a conversation and maybe some thought by the district. We collect a lot of demographics information in the process of doing our community outreach, and our intention is to ensure that we have adequately reached a representative population of the people that we are hoping to serve with the policies that we create. And one question we have begun to ask ourselves is what of that information is necessary, and what kind of liability or risk do we run having that in our possession, and how much does it limit our ability to do what we're setting out to do, and that is to reach a broad swath of populations. I know that the district routinely conducts outreach, and I don't know what kind of information you might gather on folks. And they may be riders or they may not be riders. They may be employees, they may not be employees, but just something to think about as we are considering information that is available to folks outside the agency or could be requested. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Director Carney. If I'm understanding your question correctly, when we do capture demographic data, it's randomized and it's not tied to a particular person. It's so we'll ask some demographic data, but we don't ask who the person is and their name. So it's anonymous.
That's great.
Data. Would that be
I'm
correct?
glad. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Duncan?
Not so much a question, more of a statement. I just want to ensure that part of our training hopefully includes, I know that we say that one of the exceptions here is a warrant signed by a judge, and making sure that people have the ability to recognize what a warrant signed by a judge looks like, rather than other documentation that may be presented as if it is a judicial warrant. It's just making sure that that's a thing that is included in our training.
Thank you, Director Duncan. So we're not necessarily training every employee on that. What we're directing them to do is contact their supervisor, who our chief safety officer, in conjunction with our legal counsel, will make those determinations.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions?
Are we doing comments too, or discussion?
I mean, yeah, you can comment on the resolution.
May I comment?
Yes, go ahead, Director Laramie.
Thank you, President Hinojosa. I think, first I want to begin by thanking the agency for being so proactive about this, and especially my colleagues on the DEI committee who really got into the meat and potatoes of this by asking questions and getting this resolution before us. Kind of as a general comment, I wanted to say that there's been similar statements like this made by other local governments. And the question that we often get is, why do we have to make resolutions like this? Whether you're a school district or the city hasn't made one, but the chief of police did a couple weeks ago. And why do we have to make it when it's state law, for example, is often the question. Basically, its insinuation often is that it's a waste of time and resources and or performative. And I think I just wanted to name the fact that, my father spent more than a decade in this country undocumented. And he he crossed the border 6 times when he was undocumented living in this country, and he worked as a migrant seasonal farm worker. And that lifestyle is one of extreme duress and anxiety. And, you know, my father is now in his 50s, and his body is suffering the consequences of that lifestyle. And it does have an emotional and physical toll, not knowing what could happen to somebody that you love at any given moment of the day. And the fact of the matter is, we live at a time when the threat of not coming home is much more acute and much more violent. And I think it is incumbent upon all of us, especially as an agency that is dedicated to exactly the opposite, namely building community, getting folks connected to one another, and making life here in the Mid-Valley as livable as possible, to be public about that value, and to reiterate it at every opportunity, and to say it as loudly and insistently as possible. And so I think the board in advance, should this resolution be adopted, for taking that position publicly, for the tens of thousands, maybe even more, hundreds of thousands of people in Oregon for whom that is their lived experience, who feed us and clean our homes and raise families and have children born here, and lead to people like RJ and Maria and I being here today, so in one way or another. So thank you for that.
I shouldn't have let you say anything. Now I'm going to cry. Director Navarro.
Thank you, President Hinojosa Presi. I work with veterans, and recently we've been getting a lot of phone calls because the federal VA laid off 1,000 people, and then a couple weeks later they laid off another 1,500 people. A lot of those folks that work at the VA, they're veterans, and they've equated this feeling of going into work and not knowing if it's their last to a feeling of being in combat, where they're just living in a constant state of anxiety. So I think that it's really important for us as an organization that's charged with protecting individuals to relieve that anxiety. Yes, we're charged with protecting people physically, but I think mentally is also a part of that. And in this statement right here is saying that we're going to do that. We're going to protect you physically and emotionally, within the law, so that you can ride comfortably and not have to live in that constant state of anxiety. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. I would like to, I guess, posit if we could, and I don't like doing this on the fly, but potentially amend that section on number 5 that says declining to remove riders for immigration enforcement purposes absent a judicial order, and end it there. I don't know how comfortable I feel of maintaining or emergency. Yes, Director Davidson. I almost called you Director Duncan.
I'll answer to either. Thank you, President. Since our legal counsel weighed in, I did consult the State Attorney General's guidance, and he is correct that the guidance as it relates to public facilities and our resolution is narrowly focused. The or emergency is only for facilities, and so given the guidance is from the Attorney General's office, I'm comfortable keeping it in for that specific scenario. But I recognize that I'm just voicing my one vote there.
Okay. Any other thoughts? That's why I don't like to do these things on the fly.
I have a question. If we were to adopt it with the or emergency clause, that could be amended later as that is exculpated in law, or is that right? In other words, if that's clarified or what that means, that can be amended later.
Yeah, that's
Our
true.
resolution.
Yeah,
Sure,
our
yeah.
resolution
Our
could be
resolution
amended.
could be amended, yeah. And it's, the language is coming from guidance, so, yeah.
I don't know what appetite I have to kind of run afoul of the Attorney General's advice, but I do understand the concern, and I think that I can imagine a world in which emergency is weaponized in a lot of things, and so, I don't know. That's just more of a comment, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, Director Duncan.
Obviously, we have to comply with the law, but I want to go on record and say when I think of emergency and my intention behind this resolution for emergency is earthquake, fire, major fire, life-threatening situations that might cause there to be some sort of need. I don't mean this is suddenly an emergency in order to be able to implement a law that would not otherwise be implemented. So from when I think of emergency, I'm thinking lightning strike. So just behind, so that I can state the intention that we are putting behind in our understanding of emergency lacking a legal definition. How about that?
Okay. Where are we pointing?
Oh, Sadie had her hand up.
Director Carney, did you have your hand up?
I did. I think Director Duncan kind of captured my concerns, which is, are we told it is an emergency, and we accept that? Emergency seems to have a definition that is maybe top down and not as bottom up in some cases, though maybe it's bottom up. I just, like, would we be could I be informed tomorrow that there is an emergency in Oregon that says I need to turn my license plate upside down? Do we have that kind of emergency? And would I have to respond to that emergency? I guess I'm similar to my fellow directors. I'm just not clear on how we would and could interpret that and how we might ask staff members to interpret that.
Well, if I could.
Go ahead.
Well, we would not interpret it. We would be consulting with our legal counsel of the situation and receive guidance from legal counsel.
Yes.
My question earlier obviously means I'm sympathetic to that line of reasoning, but isn't that inherently difficult in an emergency situation? Yeah. I appreciate where Director Duncan is going, and I would also like to state my legislative intent that the emergency, as I conceive it, and my intention to vote for it, is if life or limb is harmed or likely to be harmed. That is my legislative intent that I'm operating under.
Director Duncan?
If we're going to default to legal counsel in the situation that an emergency was presented, but legal counsel today cannot tell us what an emergency is, I don't see how that solves the problem.
I have another question. This is a more rhetorical question, but we're talking about immigration and customs enforcement here. In what emergency situation is ICE alleviating something or bettering a situation? I mean, under what circumstances would an emergency constitute a reason to cooperate with ICE or to allow them into our facilities, or you know, does that make sense? Like if there's a
fire.
earthquake on a 7-point something on the Richter scale, and you know, and I think there are other things other than deporting people that are probably high in our priority list. So, you know, when I'm thinking through it, I think I said I was kind of ambivalent. I don't think I am. I think I would be in favor of striking that language. As a policy, I don't vote on things for which I don't have a clear understanding of their intentions. So.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that. That was also kind of my thought behind it, and I can provide some additional context in the sense that right, ICE raids and immigration customs enforcement for our community is not something that's new. It's something that we've experienced before, and we're reactivating systems that we hoped and prayed would not have to be reactivated again. But there are specific protections that we had relied on that are now gone. Before, we had sanctuary areas that were off limits. And that's also one of the reasons why it's important to make these resolutions, because our schools and our churches are no longer a safe haven to prevent immigration customs enforcement from coming in and disrupting the learning environment or a praise and worship environment. The other thing that's different is our understanding under immigration processes is somebody gets arrested, they get held, you have the opportunity to call your lawyer, then you might get transferred to Tacoma. That's not a thing under this administration. There's expedited removal. And the idea is that they will come in, arrest someone, and put them on the quickest way out of this country. And or emergency, in my mind, is an avenue to be able to continue to utilize that process. And I want to be able to interrupt that as much as possible. So I think yes, Director Navarro.
Yeah, thank you, President Nojos Presi. I mean, I'd be in favor of striking it just because it is very vague. When we are implementing something, we want to be clear about what it is that we're implementing. And right here, I mean, we could maybe hash it out and say, or emergency defined as when life and limb are at risk. But I think that we can also come back at a later date and do that as an amendment. But at the moment, I'd be in favor of striking it.
So I think this is the fun part where we look at our parliamentarians and our people that are versed in Robert's Rules of Orders.
Well, you can make an amendment, but before, I would like to ask, just so the board is, if that was to be striked, and I'd like to ask our attorney if that word is striked and ICE agent does attempt to come onto our facilities under what they declared as an emergency, and we denied them, what is the impact to the organization and or the board if we deny that because of that? Is there an answer to that?
Yeah, so it would depend on the circumstance. I would like to clarify the only documents that we were asked to review were this document and then one other document I believe was also going to be presented to you tonight. So we haven't reviewed any of the Know Your Rights or any other materials that it sounds like you're planning to provide your attorneys, or rather to your employees. Yeah, so it depends on the circumstances and the location, whether you're talking about ICE in the front office, ICE trying to gain access to the workshop, which maybe has authorized personnel signs on it, or a bus stop, or some sort of transit center, or a bus itself. And so the laws regarding the Fourth Amendment rights to protect people against unreasonable searches and seizures is very complex, and it does depend on the circumstances. So if it would depend on where ICE is and what they're showing up with. It is true they have two different types of warrants, judicial and administrative warrants. The administrative warrant is still valid. It just serves a very different purpose. And so what any person or entity or employer is required to do in response depends on what they're showing up with. But so the reason to include the language of emergency is almost more to protect the organization and its employees, to give them a little wiggle room, as opposed to making it very clear that there's only one unless that's what you folks are looking for, some statement that there is only one circumstance under which the personnel would interact with ICE. And there's a difference between allowing them to do their job, so standing by, and actually aiding them. So there's nothing in here that says that anybody is going to be aiding them any more than absolutely required to. So does that answer your question?
I think so, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, Director Laura Midkiff,
What's his name?
attorney.
Brad.
Thank you, Radley. I have just a clarification. You said it is to the benefit of the employees to include the language. Could you just elaborate on that for our edification, please?
Sure. So I guess to the extent that the document is going to be published publicly, and you're going to be sharing it with all of your employees, the question is what exactly is the intent, and what is an employee expected to do on the spot? So assuming it's a driver, not right outside the office, not someplace where they can easily reach a director or somebody else. Forgive me, I'm not familiar with like your communication systems and radios and how easy it would be for them to call and get a hold of someone. But if you just envision like the circumstance that happened only a few days ago in New Mexico with the bus that was stopped at a checkpoint, and ICE boarded and went through and checked everybody out, and it was high school kids. Harassed a bunch of people, and eventually they were sent on their way. So what the driver has to do depends on what ICE is presenting. But if it's a judicial order, that's going to be to search, to seize, and possibly to arrest. If it's an administrative order, they're looking for someone in particular, and that's where the driver could be allowed to stand by. If it's a random check, they're not, or one of the roving stops, they're not going to have any document. They're simply going to rely on long-standing federal law that allows them to stop any vessel, vehicle, boat, train, ferry within 100 miles of any international border. That was very common with CBP during the Obama administration especially, and there's a bunch of case law as a result of it, and it appears that that type of activity is going to be increasing again soon. So the goal here is to provide some guidance to the employees who might be on the spot and directly interacting with ICE, but not tying their hands.
Director Duncan?
I had a follow-up.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I will let you do that, sorry.
So I think that helped. It certainly was more robust in your explanation, so I appreciate you for that. But specifically, the clause about or an emergency is pertaining to declining on the part of an employee, such as a transit operator, to remove riders for immigration enforcement purposes. Help me I think what I understood from your original comment was that the or emergency was to the benefit of our employees. But in what way is that true? It feels to me much more concrete to say, absent the judicial order, employees are disallowed or ought to decline to remove riders for immigration enforcement. In what way does or an emergency allow for clarification for our employees? That was my original question.
Yeah, well, because if there did appear to be some kind of emergency, and that may be, again, for example, if ICE is saying, we believe that you have someone on your bus who is a known criminal and we are attempting to arrest them, that could be perceived as an emergency. You might have a bus driver interested in trying to assist in some way in that circumstance. Some people, yes, some people, no. So it's a little bit of leeway. It's not a defined term because in a document like this, it's not the time or the place to enumerate 50 different examples of what exactly an emergency is defined as.
Understood. Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Director Duncan?
Everything you're saying is inclining me to do the opposite of what you're suggesting, because everything you're saying is that it's lending to all of these additional situations in which we would potentially have to apply that do not include a judicial warrant. The ICE are not police. If there's a potential to arrest somebody for a crime, that would be a police situation, not an ICE situation, which is why it's important to know the difference between a judicial order and an administrative order. And I know that you're the lawyer and I am not, but the entire purpose of the resolution is to try to prevent the situations that you are describing. Could you help us to do that? Because I don't feel like that's what we're discussing right now.
Sorry, was that a question or are you looking for a particular response?
Yes, Our goal is to try to protect people from unreasonable search and seizure within the sanctuary laws of Oregon, right? And the difference between ICE and the police is an important distinction. You keep describing situations that are under police purview, but without a judicial warrant are not within the purview of ICE from my understanding of ICE. So could you please clarify if I'm understanding ICE differently, or if by leaving in or emergency, we are potentially granting additional powers that we are specifically outlining not to grant within the
Yeah,
purview
so-
of the sanctuary state law?
Sorry. Yeah, so I didn't mean to interrupt. I would only add that the Oregon sanctuary laws are, it's poorly named, frankly, because it's not a sanctuary law. Oregon is not a sanctuary state, and in reality, there's no such thing as sanctuary. And it's because the law is very limited in its effect, and what it does is only restrict the ability of law enforcement in the state and federal agencies in the state to directly assist immigration in its enforcement activity. But it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't protect anybody from deportation. And people in Oregon, it sounds like everybody is well aware, are deported on a regular basis. So even with but what the law does do is create the circumstances that allows all of the citizenry to have that faith and security that when they are interacting with a federal agency, whether it's the DMV or a law enforcement officer or a transportation system, that immigration information is not going to be gathered, it's not going to be turned over, and the agency is not going to directly assist immigration in its enforcement efforts, again, barring a judicial order. The reason I included this particular language is because it came directly from the author and the sole and the primary interpreter of what the law means. And so I personally don't feel very strongly one way or the other than the fact that the authors of the law, and if you go to the website with the Attorney General that describes Oregon sanctuary law in very great detail, it's extraordinarily complex, and their interpretation of it is long and detailed and complex and nuanced, and it's too big and too much to try to fit into a document this small and narrow. Again, I don't know if that answers your question. It's just to provide some context. The one concern or question that I did express in our communication with the organization personnel is a concern that if the language was too strong, and I'm not referring to the language that's in the document right now, but if the language in the document was too strong, that it might create unrealistic expectations amongst the constituency that somehow the organization's buses are in fact a sanctuary, that people are 100% safe from ICE as long as they're on the organization's bus. And so with the way federal law works, a resolution or not, they aren't in effect. And so the additions we made to the document were to change it in a way to make sure that it complies with federal law, but also to try to get the spirit of what was intended with the document that was originally presented to us.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna maybe give us like 5 more minutes, because I also want to recognize that we will eventually need to take a recess. So Director Navarro.
Thank you. I'll be quick. So if we strike, to Mr. Bradley, if we strike or emergency from this, nothing in this document prevents a police officer from boarding a bus to remove a criminal from the bus. Is that correct? Mr. Bradley?
Yeah, no, I apologize. I was just looking carefully at the language. The language of those two clauses that include emergency are referring specifically to federal immigration authorities. So there's nothing else in the document that limits any other enforcement personnel.
So to elaborate, there's nothing in this document that prohibits police from boarding a bus to remove somebody who's committed a crime.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and Director Davidson.
Councilor Meyer, I really appreciate the the thoughtfulness that you've put into this resolution. I'm reviewing the Attorney General's guidance, and I note here that the language around emergency is dealing specifically with facilities. In our resolution, I note that we mention emergency 2 times. One is, of course, for the facilities operated by the district, and then the other is for the removal of riders. I assume that's because we're considering our buses as mobile facilities. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't know, well, facility, again, isn't a defined term.
Sure.
It's open to interpretation. But no, I mean, the clause 5 is referring specifically to removal of riders.
So I guess my question to you is, would we be meeting the guidance of the Attorney General's office by keeping the or emergency for the facilities, but not for the removal of riders?
Well, the guidance from the Attorney General's office isn't mandatory.
Sure.
It's only an example. They only provide sample language for organizations like your own to use for your own purposes.
Yeah, I appreciate
So
that.
you're not gonna violate the Attorney General's recommendations by changing their language.
Yeah.
It's just a guide.
Right. One aspect of the guide that really stands out to me, and I'll read it to my fellow board members, is the language here, which is employees of public body, in this case Cherriots, should not attempt to impede federal immigration authorities claiming an emergency justification for entering non-public areas of Cherriots facilities. Any such occurrence must be documented and reported to a supervisor immediately so that Cherriots may consider an appropriate response. One of my concerns is the situation we might be placing our employees in if we don't include the or emergency language. Realistically, they're not going to be stopping the federal immigration authorities. They may just be getting themselves involved or swept up into something. So that is one of my concerns here. But I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
Director Laura Midkiff?
Thank you. Okay, so given that, Director Davidson, and to the board and to my colleagues, does it sound like, would the inclination be to strike emergency from both clauses, or to strike it simply from, speaking candidly, my issue is around the assisting the removal of folks from the bus. I feel less strongly about what Director Davidson just mentioned about the facilities themselves, recognizing there might be some merit to keeping our employees safe and not putting them in direct confrontation with federal law enforcement agents. What's the sense of my colleagues for keeping one and not the other?
I can jump in. No, I mean, that makes sense. And I think that's what we're trying to do here is make sure that the statement aligns with state law. And by striking that from item 5, that does that by declining to aid in the removal of individuals. Whereas, number 4 is not so much aiding somebody as it is allowing access.
Director Duncan?
So in that case, are we proposing that for line item 5, we would say declining to aid, so adding the word aid, declining to aid removing riders for immigration enforcement purposes absent a judicial order, period? Is that what we are suggesting for line item 5, and then to leave line item 4? Just so I understand.
I think declining to remove riders is fine, and just striking the or emergency.
Okay, just people keep saying the word aid, and that is technically not in the line item, so I just want to point that out.
Why is that line even there? I mean, somebody's going to have to get off the bus eventually, right? Like, if they get off at State and 25th versus State and 17th, like, what's the difference? Like, am I, like, is that an actual request that a immigration official will make? That,
We don't
I
know.
guess, yeah, but, okay.
And if we follow, like, I guess, like law enforcement practices, that, no, they don't get on the bus to remove someone. You'll wait until a bus
Right.
stop.
I mean, I would be fine with cutting that whole phrase then.
Okay.
So you're suggesting removing the whole.
Number
that-
4
the
or
whole-
number 5?
Number 5, you're just removing it.
Yeah.
I would respectfully disagree. I would prefer to keep that and just remove the or emergency.
I'm also comfortable with that.
Okay, so I gave us the 5 minutes, and so I'm gonna look to whoever's gonna be our parliamentarian.
There's no motion on the floor, so when a motion is made, you can just address the change that you want to have happen.
Cool. Yes, Director Lar Midkiff.
I have a motion.
Oh, wonderful.
I move that the board adopt resolution 2025-02 regarding rider and employee safety with regard to immigration status, establishing guidelines for protecting rider and employee confidential information and ensuring uninterrupted transit services in compliance with Oregon sanctuary laws, with the amendment that we remove from item 5, that we have item 5 read, that absent the judicial order, comma, decline to remove riders for immigration enforcement purposes.
Okay,
Second.
all right, so we have the motion and the second, motion by Director Laura Midkiff, seconded by Director Davidson. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, go ahead, Director Morrow.
I just, thank you, President. Ms. Pressley, I just want to emphasize how folks can sometimes see resolutions and think like, oh, it's just a bunch of words on a paper. And it's more than that. It's a message to the community to let them know that they can exist in our society without living in a constant state of fear.
I have one final comment, which is just to thank the board for the robust discussion and to our council for entertaining our persistent questioning. Thank you.
I definitely second that. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now I will call for a 15-minute recess. So we should be back at like 6:33. Thank you very much. everyone. Okay, so it's 6:34, and we're coming back now on to agenda item 6A. General Manager?
Yeah, thank you. I'll ask Tom Dietz, our Chief Operations Officer, to please present the staff report.
Good evening, President Eno Pressey, General Manager Pollock, members of the board. I come before you tonight asking, shall the board adopt Resolution 2025-01, rescinding Resolution 2018-07, and amending the Transit Asset Management Plan, or TAM, policy number 119. So as you may recall, in 2018, this body adopted Resolution 2018-07 that put Policy 119 in place. So this really informs the district for the Transit Asset Management Plan, which is mandated by the FTA. And it really is how the district takes care of federally funded assets. That's our buildings, our equipment, rolling stock, and the like. We set forth targets, TAM targets, so that it's a term rating scale on, a sliding scale on the higher the number, the better the condition is. The lower the number, of course, not in good condition. Really guides us in assessing state of good repair on all of the equipment, millions of dollars of buses rolling out there on the street and so forth. So we review this plan every year to keep it current and relevant. Obviously, things don't stay the same age, so every year we review everything to make sure that we make any necessary adjustments, whether it's a building or a bus. Every 3 to 4 years, we do a submittal. So we submit, and this year is a submittal year. So we've spent the better part of this year making sure that everything is current and relevant. All of our term rating scales are updated, and our state of good repair is at an adequate level. So staff recommends that the board adopts Resolution 2025-01, rescinding Resolution number 2018-07, and amending the Transit Asset Management, or TAM Plan, policy number 119. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions from the board? Director Davidson?
Thank you, President Eno Pressey. Thank you very much both for the for all of this. This was a lot. This was, I believe, hundreds of pages. I did want to, I do intend to vote yes on this. I did want to flag that there were a couple instances where it looks like there is language from the prior plan. It's not the consequential things. It's the introductions where it's language referring to, things back in 2019. It references ridership numbers. It's clearly not the things that are important. And I recognize that. Anyways, I just want to flag that. And the only thing that seemed like it might be relevant is, I believe it's in the facilities, I think it's the facility maintenance plan. It's 3.2.1. It's the on-time performance section. That may need to be updated simply because we now have a CAT EVL provider. We're no longer seeking one. The KTC signal upgrades have occurred, that kind of thing. But clearly a lot of work has gone into this. I have updated hundreds, documents in excess of hundreds of pages. I have done this. Yeah, I really, really appreciate all the work. I actually did enjoy reading this, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Y'all thought that we weren't reading these documents.
It makes me happy fellow transit nerds read these documents. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Wow, okay. Well, then I guess I will entertain a motion. Yes, Director Navarro.
I move that the board, excuse me, I move that the board adopt resolution number 2025-01, rescinding resolution number 2018-07, and amending the transit asset management, or TAM, policy number 119 and plan.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, so motion by Director Navarro, seconded by Director Duncan. Any discussion on the motion? None? Then all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. I think that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now that brings us into item 6C. General Manager Pollock.
Great, I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer, Denise Rue, to please come forward and present the report.
Good evening, President Hinojos, Presti, and members of the board. Tonight, I am requesting adoption of Resolution Number 2025-03, amending Resolution 2024-01, approved on June 27th of 2024, in order to transfer funds between appropriated categories in the FY 2024-2025 budget. Finance staff monitors actual expenditures and estimates the year-end balances to determine if any appropriated division or fund will exceed appropriations. Staff currently projects that in the capital fund, the Information Technology and Infrastructure Division will be over budget by approximately $900,000, or 2.5%. The overage is due to additional costs over budget for the Comprehensive Intelligent Transportation System, the Maintenance Tracking Software Project, cameras on local and regional buses, fire control detection equipment, life cycle technology replacements, and the overhead fluid system. Other divisions in the capital fund are projected to be under budget due to the projects that are multi-year projects, allowing the capacity to transfer $900,000 to provide the needed funds to the Information Technology and Infrastructure Division. Staff recommends transferring $900,000 from the Deputy General Manager's Capital Fund to the Information Technology and Infrastructure Capital Fund. Per ORS 294.463, appropriations can be transferred within a fund or between funds during the fiscal year by the authorization of the governing body through resolution. There is no net increase in total FY 2024-25 budget appropriations with this proposed resolution. The recommended transfer of $900,000 is just from one division to another division within the capital fund. Staff recommends the board adopt resolution number 2025-03, transferring $900,000 to the Information Technology and Infrastructure Division from the Deputy General Manager's Division within the Capital Fund as outlined on the memo. May I answer any questions?
All right. Directors, any questions? Director Duncan? No? Holmstrom? No? Wow. I guess we tired them out from earlier. Okay,
I'd like to make a motion.
go ahead.
I move that the board adopt resolution number 2025-03, amending the fiscal year 2024-25 budget by appropriation transfer and authorize the transfer of $900,000 within the capital fund to the Information Technology and Infrastructure Division from the Deputy General Manager's Division as detailed in this memo.
Seconded.
Awesome. Motioned by Director Holmstrom and seconded by Laura Midkiff. Any discussion on the motion? No? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. And I see that you're coming right back around for our next item. But before that, General Manager Pollock?
I have nothing else to say. Please proceed.
Okay. Staff is requesting the board adopt resolution number 2025-04, providing authorization to apply for, commit, and comply with terms of federal awards. The Federal Transit Administration has updated the Transit Award Management System. They have requested that districts update the authorizing resolution to apply for, commit, and comply with the terms of the federal awards. This resolution fulfills this requirement. The previous resolution doing the same, giving the same authorization was adopted in 2015. So this is a refresh of that. Staff recommends the board adopt resolution number 2025-04, providing authorization to apply for, commit, and comply with the terms of federal awards. May I answer any questions?
Any questions? Director Laura Midkiff.
Thank you, President. I don't know if this is a question so much for you, Chief LaRue or General Manager Pollock, but in my day job, I manage our federal funds. And I know that there's a lot of changes happening, and I was wanted to hear about any anticipated changes with either FTA rulemaking or different grant-making processes that we can anticipate as an agency, and what impact that might have on us as an organization.
At this point, there have not been any that have had an effect on us. We're monitoring closely, but everything is status quo at this point.
Thank you. Glad to hear it.
Okay. No other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the board adopt resolution number 2025-04, providing authorization to apply for, commit, and comply with the terms of federal awards.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Director Laura Midkiff, seconded by Director Duncan. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Director Davidson.
I look forward to seeing this utilized many times in the coming years.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So now this brings us to, information reports. And so item 7A, General Manager Pollock.
I'll ask Bobby Kidd, our Strategic Initiatives Administrator, please come forward and present the fiscal year 25 Q2 Strategic Plan Report.
Okay. Just testing out. Okay. Good evening, President Ina, host Pressy, and members of the board. I'm pleased to be here this evening to report on quarter 2 of the strategic plan for fiscal year 25. The fiscal year is over halfway over, so even though I'm reporting on quarter 2, we are over halfway through quarter 3, so lots of good work. This is a reminder of the guiding principles. This is what we do each day and how we show up. And what's cool about tonight's presentation is we are able to update the community value and customer satisfaction success outcomes. Since we have the surveys completed, which have already been presented to all of you, we are able to update our success, or what success looks like. So the goal for this fiscal year for community value was to maintain a community value score of over 84, and we did. Well, we actually surpassed it, so points, so from 84 to 85, so that's exciting. And then for our customer satisfaction, we're able to update it because we have our net promoter scores for our customer satisfaction for both our local service and our Lyft service. So the goal was to keep fixed route no less than 52 and Lyft no less than 51, and this is astonishing. We are at 56 for local and 69 for Lyft. So we didn't dip below our goal, we far succeeded. And then for culture of ownership, getting excited there. Okay. For culture of ownership, we don't have an update just yet, but we do have the employee engagement survey coming, going to be implemented with staff in April. So as soon as we get those results, we'll be able to update for our success outcomes in that regard. So just a reminder, these are all of the organizational tactics we are currently working on this year. Again, these are organizational, but then we have additional tactics we're working on at the divisional level. But usually I highlight 2, 3, 4 tactics myself, but tonight we have the pleasure of hearing from some of the chiefs about some tactics that they have been working on in progress for quarter two. So we're going to start with Chief Feeney.
Thank you, Administrator Kidd. This week, we were able to present the same results that you have seen before to our own Team Cherriots. And what I'm excited to tell you is that our employees received this information with tremendous enthusiasm, and there's some of them in the room tonight. The positive response we witnessed demonstrates our team's deep commitment to understanding and serving our community better. This enthusiastic reception not only validates the importance of these surveys, but also highlights our team's dedication to our mission and their readiness to act on feedback. It's clear that our team is aligned with our goals of continuous improvement and customer-centric service. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then next, we're going to be hearing from Chief Safety Officer.
Good evening. So I'm here to talk about the tactic of its improved safety and security. So I'm happy to report I'm about 3 months here, so I'm getting my feet underneath myself here. And so the work that we've kind of been doing a lot of is reaching out with our local law enforcement, mental health, district attorney's office, really kind of rebuilding relationships and talking about our shared vision within our community. Conducted 3 listening sessions with our employees, so getting out and listening to the employees' concerns about safety and security and getting kind of a better understanding of what we're seeing out on the buses and on the system out there. We've been doing work to do a vulnerability risk assessment with DOJ and with NTSB, and those risk assessments will also help kind of drive, give us a status of our current assessments of our risks. Also gives us access to grants in the future, so be able to apply for some grant funding on different opportunities that we see to improve safety. Our team's been doing a ton of work on the agency safety plan, so the FTA put out a lot of changes, requirements, updates to that plan that we have to implement, and so our team's been doing a lot of work really integrating those changes into that plan, which will be coming to you for review here pretty soon, so we're hopefully getting that done soon. And then one of the things that I'm really excited the team accomplished is the operator in service this year. Everybody was provided with de-escalation training, so that was completed for the operators. And then we're looking at Q3 or 4 this year to implement that training agency-wide. And so getting that information out to all our employees to help them. So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. So we are, let's wrap up some of the overview for quarter 2 for the tactics. So this is just a breakdown of how many we have in both divisional and organizational. We have 18 divisional tactics underway. 2 are not started. Those are going to be transferred to next fiscal year. And then we have 14 organizational on track or in progress. And then we have 2 not started again. Those are going to be transferred to next year, next fiscal year. And those were decided pretty early on that they were going to be rolled over. Okay, so in conclusion, so like I said, we're in the middle of fiscal year 26, but that means we're also getting ready for fiscal year 26. Sorry, we're in the middle of fiscal year 25, and we're getting ready for fiscal year 26. So we started working on the work plan in December. So the executive leadership team, they've been doing some planning around goals for next fiscal year, and they're derived from the survey results. So those are both the organizational and divisional goals, planning for strategies to achieve those goals, and we'll be looking at success outcomes for fiscal year 26. So what we talked about a few slides ago with updating those goals, we're going to be updating them for next fiscal year. And then as Chief Feeney said, community and customer surveys were completed and the results are rolled out, have been to the board, and then are being rolled out to employees. So that's very exciting. So that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on the board thought that when we were going to hear from the Chiefs that like Patrick Mahomes was going to pop up? No? Okay.
Keeping you on your toes.
Director Laura Midkiff.
Thank you, President Prissy. Thank you, Administrator Kidd. My question was a comment to Chief Carpentier and Manager Garcia. We didn't have the time to pull your reportable assault data. I didn't do that because of knowing this would be kind of a long meeting, but know that we read it and we appreciated the report, and I look forward to hearing about your initiatives, Chief, in the coming months. Safety keeps being, I think, a priority for this board, certainly for our riders, folks who come to our facilities, but especially our employees.
And so we appreciate I think the frequency and the reports, and we're keeping an eye on that. So thank you for that. I also will say, as an aside, that I was speaking with one of our security contractors out here, and if true, I celebrate the fact that she shared that we're one shy of being fully complemented for our consultant team. Is that true? That's what she said, that she was doing one more hire and they'd be fully staffed there here in the downtown transit center. Is that true?
I know that they have a number of staff that are already on site, and we have identified a number of new officers that are in the pipeline to join the team. Hopefully they will all make it through, but we don't have a full complement for the contract on site yet, but I know that they are working towards that, and again, have a number of applicants that have been identified to continue to move through that process.
And thank you, Manager Garcia. And I think, if those pan out, that'd be great, because I think we haven't had a full complement ever, right? So we're
Quite a long time.
Progress. So thank you for all the work that you guys are putting in.
Yes, Director Duncan?
I love these updates, first of all. I think they're fabulous. I'm such a nerd for like these types of things, like policies and initiatives and such. So I always love the graphs. I always love the graphics. It's really wonderful also to see the strategic and intentional progress. You're very thorough, and I just so appreciate that. This is our first update from the new Chief Safety Officer, I think, and this is great. I love especially hearing about the de-escalation training. That's really big. In my life, I spent a lot of time working in emergency rooms when I was in college, and it's so vital, and it makes it such a huge difference, and so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Director Navarro.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate this report. And I don't do this very often, but I think I can speak for the entire board up here when I say congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I got a little distracted with the blinding light coming off of your ring, but
Thank you.
so thank you. And
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Thank you.
And Director Carney, I know that you probably can't see it up there, but there's a very shiny ring on Bobby Kidd's finger. All right. Now on to our next item. So 7B, General Manager Pollock.
All right, I'll ask our Chief Planning and Development Officer, Shofi Ul Azum, to please come forward.
Still not Patrick Mahomes, but I think just as exciting.
More exciting.
He is a Chiefs fan.
Yes, I am from Kansas City, and I'm still recovering from it. So, all right. Good evening, President Enos Presi and other Board of Directors. I'm here to present our fiscal year 25 quarter 2 agency performance report. And as usual, I'm going to provide some system-wide performance indicators, key KPIs, and in addition to that, some programs like Zero Fare, Van Pool, and other programs. And then this time around, we have some new information for the board about our battery electric buses, some exciting information out there. Starting with what happened in these 3 months. In October, we started the real-time passenger information. We have released it on Transit app and UMO app. And following that, in December, we have also published it on Google. It took a couple of months because Google has its own process to go through the QA/QC. So, and end of the day, by the December, we had our real-time information available on Google Map as well. And also, in the meantime, we have completed hardware installation for our CAD-AVL system. Everything is complete and installed by the end of December. And we have also planning team completed the annual needs assessment based on the feedback that we have received from our customers. Starting with the ridership, so this is one of the key areas that we focus on. So for the FY25 Q2, we have seen about 5% increase compared to the same time around last year. So, and then some other key indicators, I'd like to give a shout out to the team and Team Cherriots. We have seen 3.3 million rides in the calendar year of 2024, which is the highest ridership since 2014. So we really have recovered from COVID-19. So And it is not a surprise, and typically in month of October, we have the highest ridership for any calendar year, so this is not a surprise, either in April, May, this timeline, or in October, so October wins. So we had about 315,000 ridership on that particular month. So that's such a good connotation. I'm gonna focus on another areas, the productivity. So by the word productivity, I'm focusing on boarding per revenue hour in our system. And, you know, for our local, and even within the local service, we have high-frequency service and also some feeder routes. So we have different standards for the boarding per revenue hours. And some of the routes have consistently achieving those goals. For example, 19, 21, so those are pretty good when it comes to boarding per revenue hours. And so I'd like to we may evaluate what should be the ideal target as part of the COA, Comprehensive Operations Analysis. So, so some of the local, and especially for the regional routes, and some coverage routes that we have in our system. So we just want to reevaluate and reassess what is a realistic target, and so that we can have more proactive and something really is smart achieved, so it's reasonable and also it's achievable, and we can always be ambitious, but also we need to be realistically ambitious. With that being said, we're going to evaluate that process, and then in summary, and out of those all 8 regional routes, 6 of them we have seen some increase in productivity, and likewise for the local routes, 16 out of 21 routes we have seen some progress. So that's in a nutshell, and we have provided detailed route-by-route analysis in the report, so I'm not going to go into each and every individual routes, but I'm going to highlight some key areas. For example, boarding per revenue hour for the whole system was about 12 rides, boardings for the whole system. Please note our main areas, I mean, most of the ridership comes in our local service where we have about 15, just a little over 15 boarding per revenue hour. And this 11.9 includes the local, regional, Banpool, all of the services Lyft combined. And compared to the last time around, and we have about 5% increase of the revenue hours, and we have also seen 5% increase of the ridership, so which is as expected. And I have highlighted few routes when it comes to productivity. For those routes, like Route 6, 27, we have seen significant increase when it comes to boarding per revenue hour. And please note, even though ridership for those routes are not, it's still catching up, but still, it's a good story that it is heading to the right direction. And this is the first time around I've seen like significant, for a while, significant growth for Route 20X, about 15, almost 16% growth. So boarding per revenue hour, so that's really promising that people are catching, using our regional routes as well. And one of the key things, so I like numbers, and I was curious about like which routes has the highest number of ridership gain compared to the whole system. And it was, for this time period, Route 19, about 7,700 new rides. That's all about productivity. And now I'd like to focus on another key areas to measure how good we're doing as an agency is on-time performance, because this kind of like tells us the story of how reliable we are, and can customer rely on us and rely on our services. So this kind of tells us the story. And I'm just comparing FY25 Q1 and versus FY25 Q2. The time frame is pretty back-to-back. So, and you see the on-time performance was 82.3% in FY25 Q1. And we're using, we have the ability, Swiftly is the pilot that we're in right now. And in the first quarter of FY25, we had the ability to track it. So that's why I'm comparing it, accurately track it. So you see there's slight increase on the on-time performance, but in that time frame, we were able to identify the problem. So you see the early departure was a huge number, about more than 10% was in early departure. In this time frame, we have seen just a slight decrease from 11.6 to 10%. However, as we speak now, our on-time performance is about 87%. So significant reduction of the early, so that's basically increasing our on-time performance. Huge shout out to our transportation team. So this is the return on investment. We invest in something, this is how we can see the impact to the community and our organization as a whole. And, this is all of our favorite program, Youth Pass program. And I'd like to highlight, this is probably the first time I've seen some decline in ridership since I'm at Cherriots. And so not a significant decrease, but, nothing can go forever up. However, we have done something differently. We have implemented youth identity verification requirements from October of this year. And I would not say this is the only reason why we have seen some decline in ridership, but we're going to monitor this, and then hopefully I can report back and what are the other variables may contribute in this whole thing. Please note, we still have about 25% ridership is coming from this program. So this program is still rocking. Cherriots contracted services, focusing on the lift, and you have seen probably, on-time performance a little bit decreased. Our goal is to 91% compared to the last quarter. It's slightly decreased because of some operational operator shortage issues. That's pretty industry-wide common issue here. And then rides per revenue hour, it's 2.11. And I looked at last 18 months rides per revenue hour for Lyft. So it's ranging from 1.9 to 2.2, and on an average, we have about 2.1. So, and our target is 2.75. So as part of, as I said, evaluating like what is the realistic goal? So I think we're gonna evaluate all those variables and see where exactly we lies and what should be a realistic target. But this is just to give you the context, like last 18 months, this is where we have been doing. But we have seen significant increase from 1.9 to 2.2, consistently more of those recent past 2.2. So we're heading to that direction. And another highlights that I'd like to mention is complaints per 1,000 trips. Goal is less than 2. I think back in August, I reported this was more than 2. And since then, our contractor, MTM, installed a drive cam, so that helps us to improve the operator behavior and potential coaching opportunity so that we can prevent those accidents from happening. So you see it's 0.0007, so almost nothing. So we had about 25,000 trips, only one incident. So that's why, still there is something after 3 zeros, but it has significantly reduced. So that's another shout out, like if you have the right tools and technologies and proper coaching, you can make a real difference. In addition to that, so the shared ride, 2/3 of our all trips have more than one people. So that's another key indicators. We're moving more people, better usage of our resource, and which is particularly with the tool that we have, VIA. So that's really with the technology you can achieve those kind of things. The van pool program, and we're super excited that the board approved on our new contract. So that means we have a little bit more money, and this is for FY25 Q2, and that quarterly subsidy amount is $43,875. So which is about 27% of the total operating cost. So our goal is not to exceed 50%. So we're at 27%, so we're providing 27% of the whole operating cost. And another piece is occupancy rate, so how many people or seats are occupied, 65%, and our goal is to pushing it up to 70, so work in progress, but we have seen consistent increase and growth on that area. And another thing I'd like to highlight on is about more than 60% riders or van pullers, they have English as a second language. So in some cases, not only that, they don't have a driving license or something, so they need somebody to go to their workplace. Most of those are probably in agricultural sectors or somewhere else. They are solely relying on this much needed service. So, and this is, and probably you already know, this is the largest van pool program in the state of Oregon, and I will have some exciting stuff in the next quarter to report, but I don't want to disclose this now, but more to come. And the safety and reliability trend. So this is basically how, this is another area, like we really need our buses are in good shape, and then they have enough training so that we can prevent those accidents from happening. So all the good KPIs, including preventable accidents per 100K miles traveled and road calls per 10K miles traveled. So all of those, for all of our services, achieve the goal. So that's a huge shout out to our training and transportation team overall. And without these, I mean, and also the other two is pertinent to the maintenance. Without that, your buses are not ready to serve. So this is really important to maintain our scheduled trips. So regular monitoring and maintaining, so that, and also completing the preventive maintenance, inspection on time. So that all plays into this whole ball game. So huge shout out to the maintenance team as well to keep the ball rolling. And this is the new information, and as I said, every time I'm coming here, I'm going to add new KPIs, new information. So this is just a snapshot of the battery electric buses. You know, we started our operation back in October, and it's a slow start. A few vehicles operated a substantial amount of mileage, but overall, I think we drove about 31,000 miles in that time frame. So, and then, and the regeneration rate, I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's basically we use a regenerative brake that puts some of the energy back into the battery, so our operator use that. Typically, industry-wide average is 10 to 30%. That's where it goes. We're in the higher high, so about 28%. So our operator is doing a pretty good job, and our probably credit goes to the trainer. So, and then some of the things that you all love about the greenhouse gas emission savings. So this is carbon dioxide, about over 11,000 pounds, and then this is huge. And I have some translation. What does that mean? So 11,000 pounds of carbon dioxide savings. Basically, it's equivalent to 236 mature trees over 1 year. So this is how much trees we would need to save that kind of emissions. And then equivalent to eliminating 1,260 car trips length of our Route 11, which is that corridor about 10 to 11 miles. So I put it in a perspective. So 1,260 car trips along the Lancaster corridor on the Route 11. So that many trips you have eliminated and that amount of emissions. So that's the translation of those emission savings. And another piece is, and the key areas that we'd like to understand is optimal range. And you know that it will change throughout the year, so we will understand the seasonal variability, very high temperature, very cold temperature, and how our operator is driving, and all those variables impact the range. So on an average, we have achieved 133 miles every time you fully charge your vehicle, but some of the vehicle have achieved way more. So we have seen like 148 or something. So it will change. So as I said, we have just started. So we need more data, and then we'll be able to settle down on an average where it lies. For a program like this, you have to wait at least 12 months to see the whole year around and see where exactly we are and what improvements we may need to make. And some information to look ahead. And as I said, we're going to keep adding more information like cost per revenue hour, potentially fare box recovery, and some marketing KPIs, how good we're doing. And we have some updates on the mobility reimaging, so how we can attract new riders. You know, we have several reports that says our existing riders increasing our service more, so that's what probably is pushing our ridership. But we're also focusing on how we can attract new riders who are not currently using our system, but what exactly we can do to attract them, and what additional services we may need to introduce. So all exciting stuff, and there's some updates on the mobility reimaging later today. And I will stop here in case you have any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Director Laura Midkiff.
Thank you, and thank you, Shofi, for your presentation. I have a question and then kind of a question. The first question is more of a clarification. So the 133-mile range for the electric charge, from what I remember from the ribbon cutting, that's more, maybe even a lot more than we anticipated. Is that still true, or remind me, check that for me where expectations were when we got the buses versus now when we're now operating them?
I don't know what number you had, but there are methods, like for example, we have 444 kilowatt full capacity battery, but we don't use 100% capacity, so we have to have a 20% state of charge left over in case something happens. You can still drive back to that, so we have to use the optimal capacity, not the nominal capacity. So we used also the efficiency, how kilowatt hour per mile, so how much energy you need to drive 1 mile. So we used all those different numbers. But 133, as I said, we have pretty small amount of data set in a certain weather condition. But from my experience in other areas, it's pretty good, I would say. And energy efficiency that we have achieved, it's aligned with Altoona certification. Altoona is nationally, they provide certification for all weather conditions, so which is aligned. So we're aligned with what it's supposed to be. And 133, as I said, depending as we move forward and our operators get more used to with this and different weather conditions, it might go up. But 133 is pretty good.
So that actually sparks a follow-up question before my next question, which is, I remember, at that same event, Tom was asked a question about how far could we get on the route before we recharge? Do you remember that question? And do we have any updates on that? I mean, how many times do they charge per day? What's our? I know that may vary, of course, as the year wears on and more data becomes available. But right now, how often are we charging? Are we charging?
I probably can answer, but I will defer this to Tom if you'd like to answer that. But I can, but I'd like him to answer that.
I believe you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Director Lar-Midkiff. We're charging more than we anticipated, mainly because especially right now with the colder weather, the heaters are really draining the batteries. But we're going through, we've lowered our mandated rate, if you will, for the operators to charge. So we're actually asking them to charge when the bus reaches 80% state of charge, because they're getting 12 minutes on the good side at Kaiser Transit Center for opportunity charging.
Okay, thank you. 80% is very high. Does that strike anybody as high? Help me understand that more, actually, before I.
Yes, 80% is high.
Yeah.
The challenge becomes when the outbound ends at Marion County Correctional Campus, there's no place to charge.
Sure.
And during certain times of the day on Lancaster, your opportunity to get regenerative charging is diminished because of traffic. So it just depends on the time of day, what state of charge the bus leaves. For example, in cold weather, it could take 20% of the battery just to warm the batteries up to let them leave the yard. So there's a lot of facets of this that we're still learning, and we just happen to be learning them in the cold part of the year. So I think I agree with Shofi. When people are saying, how's it going, ask me in a year, and we'll know the true cost of ownership of these vehicles. But we're still learning how to operate these, how to charge them, how to make them work in our system, and we're still putting them out there every chance we get.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for entertaining those questions. I think, I don't want to speak for the board, but I would like to, I know a year is, I understand that, but I'd like to hear how things are going kind of periodically, just to kind of understand where we are and kind of the pulse on that rollout. So I think it's really important for us to know and also for the community to hear about during board meetings. My other question on a different topic was the youth.
Before we move on, so some of those will be answered in the next report. So we're working on more robust KPIs for BBs. But those are not ready yet. So as I said, so some of those will be answered in the FY25 Q3 report.
I look forward to that. Thank you. My question was around what our protocols are now that identification is required for youth when they board buses. What are our norms now in terms of recording youth that don't swipe onto the bus? I ride Route 16, so it's totally anecdotal, but I ride Route 16, which is one of those overperforming routes, which I never missed an opportunity to mention. Should be more frequent than an hour. And I mentioned that because it's a high youth ridership route because it goes up by the high school and the Calipuya Middle School. And while I know the IDs are required and expected, I would say 25% of youth actually swipe their IDs. I mean, they just come on the bus. And previously, operators used to press the button and document when folks were coming on the bus, but I've seen less of that. So I just don't know how much of that is within like a margin of error of operators not documenting, again, totally anecdotal, but I just wanted to get your reaction to that.
No, I think you're right. So I can start and then Tom or Ellen can fill in. So you're right. So even if you don't have the identity verification, they still can ride. We're not denying the rights just because of this. But we're also exploring, like you mentioned, so like all the other reasonings. This could be one, like what if in a one stop there's like 15 kiddos showed up, like, and drivers have to be on time, maintain the schedule, and then like hop on. So, and again, this is just example. And we're exploring all those different things. And then another piece is like the timing, and then when we launch the program and the requirements, I mean, the next time it might be better because the school district might have better chance to and print those identity verification, not only printing it, make sure that it's available to the students ahead of time. So, and we just started it, so in the next year or two would be much better. So, and I know that our communications team, Seth is working on that, so he will probably be reaching out to them sooner. So, and we have the EUMO, and that will make the boarding process much smoother. So in the year or two, we're expecting much higher and better results, so the school will have enough time to adapt. And not only that, students will have those things, and maybe we can communicate better, like how we can actually make that happen if school needs any assistance from us, technology side.
I also
Thank you.
want to provide like a clarification, and I don't think that this is what you were saying, but not every single youth has an ID. It's
Yeah.
just the high schoolers. So there could be the kiddos that are like middle school age that are not tapping.
Yeah, and only I believe Salem Kaiser School District had these IDs, but not others. So, and as I said, this is the first year, so I mean, we will work on this to make things better next year. So hopefully other school districts will have time and resource and process in place so that next year we can have much better results.
And rollout was mid-year, right? It was like in the winter?
No, it was the beginning.
It was October? Oh.
In the fall, yeah.
Yeah, and we certainly want to improve the compliance rate and get those in hand. The primary purpose of having that is not necessarily to have every youth have the card. It was brought about because of fair abuse of
Right.
people who didn't qualify were saying we didn't want to have a challenge. So it's a way for those that are close to challenge it. And so, but yeah, there'll never be all youth will have all the card because there's just too many. But those in the high school area and those that are close, we want to try to control fair abuse.
40,000 students in a school district is too many? Just kidding. Okay, Director Duncan.
Very quickly, I just wanted to say, one of the things I particularly appreciate about your reports is your ability to draw a direct line to technology and services that we have authorized here and showing how they improve the results that we in the community depend on. It can be intimidating sometimes. We pass a lot of different things, we buy a lot of different technology, often technology that's new and cutting edge or that we haven't used in this district before, and helping us to show the public that those things that we're doing and the way that we're spending the money here at Cherriots is directly impacting and benefiting the community is something you do very well. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Director Davidson.
Could you provide an update on the TSP on the Lancaster corridor? Because I've heard some comments tonight that make me think that, boy, it would be nice if we got that up and running for our battery electric buses.
Okay, sure. So we have made some progress on that. So that project was kind of like dead for about 14 or 15 months because city's fiber communication system was down. So everything is back, and we are rolling on this. So we're testing 3 intersections before we deploy this for all the 22 intersections. City of Salem staff are validating those programming language with our providers. Our Light is our vendor. So once you complete that integration and testing, then we're going to deploy this. So we're looking maybe sometime this summer we'll have some pretty close to an end. But one of the things that we're trying to figure out is some logistics around, so that we're working with our partners, but the project is rolling.
That's very encouraging. Thank you.
One last thing, I'm sorry.
Okay, Director Lauren Midkiff.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Again, I just a gentle reminder about CADIVL and Spanish language. quality of the language. I appreciate it's been rolled out now, fleet-wide, and as someone who uses the bus a lot, it's still an area of improvement.
I recorded the announcement. That's how.
Did you really?
Yeah, I'm like, well, like I feel like sometimes, we can sit up here and be like, it just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
But I recorded it because I'm like, this is my evidence to show you how wrong this sounds.
But, and it's not, again, we want folks to be having the same experience, independent of language spoken. So I think just want to underscore that importance. And I think I had previously at a board meeting, or at a previous board meeting rather, said that the grammar was fine, but the pronunciation was off. That's not true, actually. I was noticing that there was a couple grammatical mistakes, phrases ending in infinitives when they shouldn't end in infinitives. So just wanted to flag that, and would love to have another, maybe conversation about that at some other time.
I tell you, and Tom, can you so we had a conversation with Val 2 weeks ago, senior leaders teams, and that was the major topic of discussion. So we're trying to address that, and one solution we did is just having someone locally do all the analysis. So we're working with the Vail on that. So it has not been forgotten. It's just taking a little bit of time.
I volunteer.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving right along to item 7C, General Manager Pollock.
Great. I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer to come back up and present the quarterly report.
Good evening, President Hinojosa Pressey and members of the board. Tonight I am presenting the fiscal year 2025 Quarter 2 financial report. You will find the financials in your board packet on pages 79 through 83. Moving on to the financial overview, it's definitely has been audit time for us, and it still is. Lots of that activity going on. So for the report of independent auditors, the deficiencies in internal control and the fraud and noncompliance with laws and regulations, audits were all completed and filed with the Secretary of State on December 31st of 2024, which is their due date. As far as other activity for the audits, like I said, there's a lot going on right now. It wasn't in second quarter, so we'll have more to talk about next quarter. On the second page, the activity for the year-to-date activity for the quarter. So we should be looking at expenses or revenues being in the 50%, expenses below 50%, and it's always great when the revenues are over 50%, but that depends on the timing of drawdowns and such. So for the general fund, year-to-date through quarter 2, revenues were at 56%. A lot of that is due to property taxes that come in the second quarter with the November due date. And the expenses were at 46% for general fund, ranging anywhere from 33% to 49%. So we are under budget in all of those areas. But as I mentioned earlier tonight, we definitely monitor to make sure that we stay within budget compliance. For the Transportation Programs Fund, for the revenues, year-to-date through quarter 2, we're at 18%, which is about where we are every quarter 2 for previous years, and 35% for the expenses. Capital Fund, we're at 2%, which is again comparable to prior years. We've had so much activity going on just through December, not a lot of money, not a tremendous amount of money being spent yet. But on the expense side, we're at 3%, and most of that is for the ITS project. Like I said, just we've got a lot coming through. Just didn't happen by December 31st. So for sharing the Cherriots story, as far as our organizational tactics, through quarter 2, we have spent $21,910. For the ITS project, we've spent $1,024,277, and we're at the system acceptance. In Q2, we did complete the installation. For the comprehensive operational analysis, that solicitation was completed in the Q2. For the Del Webb Gate and Fence project, through Q2, we have spent $38,273 for project management, engineering, and design costs. And then as far as developing our long-range financial plan, through the end of the Q2, we had spent $11,600, and we're still working with that vendor. May I answer any questions?
Any questions? Director Davidson?
Thank you, President. I note in your staff memo that we are still waiting on the FTA to obligate some federal grants. Could you give me a sense of how much of those FTA grants are discretionary as opposed to formula, if you happen to know that?
I will need to double check and see what the split is on that.
That's all right. Part of the reason I asked that question is because my understanding is that FTA is currently processing, though slowly, FTA formula grants. However, they have paused FTA discretionary grants. Does that match your understanding as well?
We haven't received notification that they have paused.
Okay.
They're in constant communication as far as their processing of things, but it is moving very slowly.
Yeah. It is a concern of mine what we do if and when federal grants that we are depending on do not come. I recognize that unobligated federal funds are not technically real, but they're in our budget. They're something that we're certainly counting on. So I would love at a future, perhaps work session to get a better understanding of our risks or perhaps our exposure to the federal funds that we're expecting, both discretionary and formula. So, thank you.
Can tell you, we had the beginnings of that conversation today.
Wonderful.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you and your team for all their hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us into item 7D. General Manager Pollock?
Great. I'll ask Chief Feeney to come up and present the report.
Good evening, President Hinojos Presi and members of the board. This evening, we will be sharing our 90-day community engagement initiative, which is spanning March, April, and May, designed to build goodwill and ahead of our June Mobility Reimagined launch. Both of these plans focus on establishing community awareness, understanding, and support for our proposed service enhancement plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Dana at just a moment. But one thing I want to emphasize is that both of these plans, we want to keep fluid. And what I mean by that is if one of you has a tabling event or a story, we want to know about it. And it wouldn't take any effort at all to insert that into the plan. And so it's going to continue to evolve as we work together on this. But the primary objectives of this 90-day plan that we're going to be starting next week, increase our brand visibility and improve Cherriots' image, demonstrate the value Cherriots provides to the community, boost community engagement and awareness of Cherriots services, and cultivate goodwill and build strong relationships with stakeholders. And so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dana Terrell.
Hello, it's good to see you again. You had some great feedback the last time I was here, and you're hopefully going to see some of that incorporated as we continue on in the campaign. And I echo what was said here on please continue to provide it because it's helpful. And In addition to the tabling and the stories, you had mentioned wanting to get out into the community and give presentations in all the groups that you may be involved in or aware of, and that will come as a future phase of this as well. So keep that all in mind. We talked last time about developing the creative campaign that moves forward with the Creating Community Connections, kind of fleshes that out into a community engagement campaign. And the next 90 days, we'll take that and produce stories with them, build a website specific for this campaign, create content, and then post the content. These are the initial 6 stories that we hope to produce over the next 3 months. You'll probably recognize a few of the names on there. At least I hope you do. And if you're on the list, I hope you've been asked.
Not formally.
And I haven't had the chance to meet, except for you who will be there, I haven't had the chance to meet others, but I've heard about their stories, and it'll be really great. I mean, I think the barber shop owner, the Chemeketa student, Kaiser Mayer, and you that will be featured. I've heard of the stories, and I think they will be a great kickoff to our campaign. The campaign website will be ridechariots.org, and you might wonder, why do we want to create a separate website? The reason for that is so that we can completely control the look and feel, and that we can use it as what we would call campaign site for landing pages. So as we build out stories and eventually have advertising, it can direct specifically to pages with an intentional effort for a call to action or something that we want the viewer or the person interacting with it to take. We plan to create that website fully in English and Spanish. And for the content, we talked about this a little bit last time as well, and we want to get very specific to the platforms. So each of the social media platforms have very specific parameters, and we want to produce content that is organic and specific to those. So the carousel format is when you're on Instagram or Facebook and you can scroll through some photos that will tell a story. We'll have those, which also just provides great photos for the library, for Patricia and the team to be using in all of the materials. Videos will be created in short and longer form for various places. We'll review the platforms in a minute. There'll be written narrative for each one of the stories to accompany them on YouTube descriptions, social posts on the website. And we will have horizontal and vertical formatting. So for in an industry like mine, that becomes a challenge that we need to look for upfront. Some platforms want to see it in the traditional widescreen that you see on your screen before you, and now there's social platforms that encourage you to be vertical. So we'll be sure that all of our visuals are taken in both formats. And again, the content will be in both English and Spanish. So platforms, we mentioned the campaign website. We will prepare them for the emails that the team sends out. Facebook in both the post format and stories for video and photos. Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we discussed some other platforms and decided that these would be our primary ones. Although last month, Reddit came up. Right now, I am suggesting that this story format might not be the best for Reddit, but it could be a platform that we want to engage with on seeing how the community is discussing topics around Cherriots. And also as we move into the next phase after this 90 days, which is more of asking for feedback about the service enhancement plan, that might be a better format, better topic for Reddit. Is that it? I think that's it for this first 90 days. Any questions or feedback on this part?
Any questions? Director Navarro?
Thank you, President Hinojosa Presi. I don't have a question, but I have more of a comment.
Yeah.
And so there is a group that I'll talk about a little bit later on in my my report, but it's called the CBEL, the Community Business and Education Leaders, I think it is. And they facilitate, they're called neighborhood family councils. And they host some really cool events all throughout the community where hundreds of families show up. And so yeah, I'd encourage you guys to get connected with Eduardo Angulo, who is the coordinator out there. And hopefully he can get you plugged in so you can attend all those events.
That's great.
Director Duncan?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just have a quick question about the campaign website. I'm just curious, how are you managing SEO between the two? I would hate for us to create two and then have, when people look up Cherriots, they get the wrong website. Are they linked to each other? I know that there's a lot of different ways to do that, so I'm just curious how you're managing it.
For clarity, before you answer that, could you just tell us what SEO stands for?
SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. It's the thing that determines what you see first on Google.
Thank you.
That's a great question. You have great SEO, search engine optimization, for what you offer right now on your main website, and we never would want to take away from that. You'll only get to this site through direct links. So you'll only get there through clicking through from YouTube or from a social media platform or from the main site. So it's really kind of behind it, so to speak. So I wouldn't imagine that you would even use a search to get to this campaign website.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions on this? Director Holmstrom?
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on that, it's going to be very clear on that campaign website that if you want to learn about, what the fair is and how to ride, here's the link on the top of every page, like go to cherriots.org, right?
Yes,
Hopefully? Okay.
and that is how it helps the main site SEO. So inbound links are important for that, although I don't think that your site needs it, but it won't hurt to have an external site directing for that kind of information, and yes.
Director Laura Midkiff?
Thank you. I don't know anything about SEOs. And as I said last meeting, really anything that you do, but I appreciate you for doing it. So that aside, because I don't know, I just don't know the answer to this. So are you saying then that if I were to search, what was it, ridechariots.org, is that what, then it won't appear in a Google search? Or help me understand how that works, because I'm someone who, when I do use the internet, which is often enough, I just Google things. He's laughing. So help me understand that. Like I go to search for things, and it would be hard for me to find a link. Anyways, help me understand.
Sure. If you typed in ridechariots.org, you would get to it directly. It would be at the top of the list. However, if you typed in how to ride the bus or just chariots or any of the other topics, I need to go somewhere, how do I get there? Whatever the search terms, as we call them, that would bring chariots to the top, I'm not expecting our campaign site to be even close to the top of that, because I'm not trying to. I'm just using it as a place to house content and for people to, when they click somewhere, to direct them very specifically to the content we want them to see.
Okay, but if I were to look at it, look for it online.
Yes, it won't be hiding.
Okay, thank you.
Director Davidson, what? Oh, Director Davidson.
Before I ask my question, I just love to marinate in the image that Director Laura Midkiff thinks that this is hidden on the dark web, and you have to use the Tor browser to somehow access this website.
All right,
But-
y'all. So, technology is prevalent in our lives, but not in everybody's lives.
Anyways, this actually may be a question about both the campaign website and then our normal website. I have noticed in my interactions with many people in the community that very few seem to be able to spell chariots. It's not just autocorrect to Cheerios. It is chariots like the Egyptian mode of conveyance, or chariots with one R. Did we buy up the domains for every variation of that? We did. Okay.
Correction.
With the exception of
Director.
Cheerios, I imagine. Yeah.
We did. We actually do have ownership of several domains.
Okay.
If you want a specific list, I'd have to go back and look because it's been a while since
Sure.
we've done that. But as different apps show up, we are buying up that domain as soon as it happens. So for like Blue Sky, for example, we were immediately on it.
Okay.
So that is part of our repertoire.
So if I was to type in Cherriots with one R.org or ride Cherriots with one R, well, the one R that you know what I'm talking about, it would go to the website that we want them to go to?
Generally, I have found that even if you spell it Cherritos, you'll end up on our website.
Great, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that is because of the great SEO that the website has. We could keep talking about that all day. But because you're here locally and Google knows that, if you're anywhere near talking about the things that Cherriots provides, including typing it in wrong, it'll probably try to direct you correctly.
Director Duncan?
That's okay.
Okay. Any other questions? No? My only question was on the memo, and I might have missed it if you talked about this. There's talk about maintaining a presence in local media through radio spots. And there's 3 station IDs listed. I was wondering if any of those do programming in like Spanish?
KWIP.
Okay, wonderful, okay. If not, there's just a plug for KTUP 98.3.
President and Host Pressy, those are also placeholders. There's other opportunities for radio spots, but those were 3 primary ones that we've used and are known entities to Cherriots.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. Just wanting to make sure that we're driving in the multilingual outreach. That's my main concern. Okay, any other questions? No? Then we'll keep going.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. What I'm going to do for this next part is we are going to walk through the 90-day schedule. And so Dana's filled you in on quite a bit of things that are happening in terms of the social media and the storytelling, which is really essential. But what I want to emphasize is that even though we have moved to a different timeline with this 90 days, we haven't stopped work. We began working in February. And so when you go to March of 2025 on the 90-day schedule, weeks 1 and 2, we are finalizing our pieces right now. The visual branding to increase visibility and improve Cherriots' image. We adjusted the logo, which I absolutely love what the Terrell Group did. They've also incorporated more vibrant colors, which I think is great. It really refreshes the brand. We are continuing to develop our key messages, highlighting the value Cherriots provides to the community, and emphasizing again that 85% of the community members surveyed believes Cherriots provides value. We are working on creating taglines, which my team always loves, a lot of good brainstorming going on, that reflect Cherriots' commitment to delivering valued mobility options that inspire community pride. Week 3 to 4, we're still in March. We're working on our digital presence enhancement, the final social media content calendar focusing on storytelling and again service highlights, and we're creating a series of short videos that'll showcase our services and how they impact the community. And so that's March. Any questions on March? It's going to be here like Saturday. And so anyway, the team's ready though. We'll hit the ground running. And as I said, we already have a lot of momentum because we didn't stop this work just because we adjusted the timelines. And so we're going,
Director Navarro, I think you had a question?
Yes. The question that I had was that as we're rebranding, or not rebranding, but just creating, a new image, are we incorporating some old things? And what I'm thinking of is like, I don't remember the name of them, but like the little gremlin characters.
We actually refer to them as Team Cherriots.
Okay, sorry.
And
My bad.
yes, any opportunity we can incorporate them, and we do. Although I have to tell you, the designer, the way he looks at them right now, I said, oh man, that one's already in college. They don't look like that anymore. But we said that they're timeless. It's like Winnie the Pooh. I mean, he doesn't grow up. And so, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the characters. And so I would love to continue to incorporate them. And I think Dana has an appreciation for them as well. So, yeah, noted.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, I mean, Elmo keeps celebrating his 3.5 birthday, and he's been around for a while. Not so much of a question, but just, I also want to make sure that, because this is just kind of like goodwill out in the community, I don't want us to take ourselves like a little too seriously. So I mean, if there's like chances to sprinkle in some fun, and not saying that it's not represented here, but I'm just thinking, like when I'm thinking about finalized social media and focusing on storytelling and service highlights, like, you know, is there any room for like memes, things like that? Like, and I know that it might be just like this day and age, but I also thought of a way of like when we're branding the fact that our battery electric buses like replaced 1,200 cars, my brain is like, as a meme, what would that look like? Like, I don't know, how many Shofis is that? Or something like that. Like, and I just feel like it's something that would also help people think of like, you know, the people that are actually behind the organization. Director Holmstrom?
Yeah, thank you, President Hinojosa-Presi. I think just following up on that, it may or may not be useful, and maybe you already do this internally, it's just not here, is to kind of talk about the voices that the organization might want to be portraying, whether that's fun and whimsy or, you know, seriousness or whatever it is, you know, whatever it is, but, you know, there's a lot of information to get across, there's a lot of things we can be proud of. But it's always, I think, you know, helpful to, you know, I know we're an institution, right? And sometimes it's hard for an institution to have a voice, but it may be useful to identify some of those characteristics that we're looking for in our messaging. And I'm sure that's something you do all the time and you're working on that. So I'm preaching to the choir here probably, but I think that might be useful to lay out clearly here too. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Holmstrom. So, with,
Hold on, I think we've got another question.
Just briefly.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to piggyback on what you said about the memes. I know that we are absolutely not the marketing committee, but in DEI, I have to say that Chief Employee and Labor Relations Officer Hayel and Kira and I always have really great ideas about funny reels. So if you ever want input on memes, we got your back. Yeah, that's all.
Director Davidson? We've fully derailed your presentation, by the way.
I'm probably not going to bring it back on the track. Director Holmstrom's point about different voices, given that this is an institution and we probably can't pull off whatever Northwestern Ohio sewer regional government has done, but the jabber puppet of Team Cherriots, he can do comedy for an institution. It's a puppet of, it's an orange monster character, excuse me. I don't know, he or it, I don't actually know how anyways, jabber could be a vehicle to convey information in a whimsical way, is all I would say.
Thank you. And we'll hold our questions so y'all may continue.
Good conversation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in April because the first week, 1 and 2, is the Cherriots Champions campaign, which is basically what Dana's already addressed in terms of the storytelling. And so again, we're going to be sharing our stories in all different venues. But per our survey results, we do want to highlight that work is the #1 purpose for our customers, emphasizing Cherriots' role in supporting the local economy. And so that itself is going to be one of our stories. You did mention that you want to do something that's a little more whimsy, which I completely agree. I think that transit can be fun. And so week 3 and 4, we are going to do transit trivia, a social media campaign. It's going to be interactive, hopefully fun. Maybe we can bring Jabber back at the suggestion of Director Davidson. Right now, he's housed at Del Webb. He's in safe hands. And so with Christian Sorensen, who's in our IT group. So we can bring him back. I think that's a great suggestion. But we have such great data and information right now that we want to share with our writers and our community, that this is going to be fun, but it also be very informative because, again, the last survey results need to be out there and exposed in many different ways. And so that brings us up to April. Okay, all right. So May, bringing it home. So this is going to be very targeted outreach partnerships. And so we want to look to the business community, in particular, the businesses that are downtown with employees, because parking downtown is, it's prime real estate, it's scarce, and we also are moving toward having paid parking. And so with that said, it'd be great to be able to partner with these downtown businesses and introduce them to Cherriots and bus passes and group pass and all of that. And so that's the plan there. Then we also are creating informational packets that we want to get out to businesses that highlight all the benefits of transit. So these are like leave-behinds that they can take and digest. Then wrapping it up in the last 3 and 4 weeks of May, we're doing our Cherriots Connects neighborhood campaign. And what we're going to be doing there is we're going to focus in on a neighborhood and be able to provide them with information. So for example, if you live in a South neighborhood, where are all the places you can go? If you want to have a quick lunch or you want to try a coffee, these are the places that'll get you, and this is the bus that'll get you there. And so that's going to be our plan, working with the neighborhood, because I don't know if the neighborhood associations are as aware of everything that we offer and everywhere we go. It's always a surprise to me when people don't know that we, we go to Gates. That surprises folks, but anyway. So that brings us through March, April, and May.
Very brief.
Yes, Director Laura Midkiff.
I think that last point, Patricia, is actually really good and smart, because whenever I go to the neighborhood association, I always tell people that, I catch lunch downtown or do something, and I go from downtown to my doorstep in 8 minutes on the bus, and that's often maybe even faster than you would get driving. And so I think that's really, really smart.
Remember that point when we interviewed you.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Any questions on our 90-day?
Not so much a question, but I also hope that, I know that moving on from 90-day, we'll be moving into another campaign, but I really feel like this would lay a really strong groundwork of just like the continuation of Cherriots marketing and leaning more into social media.
So so in June through November is when we're going to be doing our enhancement marketing outreach plan. And if you look at the timeline, there is overlap, and that's intentional because they are running parallel to each other. And so March and April, gearing up for the June, which is going to be the open houses, the community outreach events, the neighborhood association presentations that this team is going to be doing. We're finalizing our campaign materials. We are finalizing the website, as Dana said, our feedback mechanisms, and finalizing what our messaging framework is going to be. And so when we move into May, we're going to be doing our pre-launch activities, gearing up for June. And so that we're going to have our promotional campaign activation, we'll have our stakeholder briefings, and then we need to orient and train our own team before we go out and start getting feedback and promoting Cherriots and our proposed enhancements. Now, June's going to be the big month. We'll have community tabling events, we'll have our strategic presentations and our open houses at various community locations, and our digital engagement campaign will be in full throttle at that point. And what we've done is we've broken these down in phases. I just find it easier to approach a marketing campaign if you do it in manageable chunks. And so the first phase is going to be March through April. Again, with the campaign branding, everything is being finalized. The website is going to have interactive service enhancement map, feedback submission portal, an event calendar, and an FAQ section. Then we're going to design promotion, education, and our informational materials. There'll be handouts, signage, digital, really anything that you can think of that would educate, promote, and support. Then we have our feedback mechanisms. So we've designed our structured online survey to optimize for our mobile devices, created our printed survey alternatives, and then established a consistent method for collecting, categorizing, and evaluating the feedback. And then 5 is our stakeholder mapping. So we are identifying those key community groups and partners and identify them by their geography, demographics, their interests, et cetera. It just makes for a more effective marketing plan if you know who you're marketing to. And then if you notice, you're on there as well. We're going to be scheduling our preliminary board member involvement with community groups. And we will work around your schedules because I know that you all have other lives, if you will.
Outside of transit, absolutely not.
In phase 2, which is our pre-launch, this is now May of 2025. Our goal here is to build a lasting connection between the brand and our customers, enhance our brand awareness, and increase our community support. And we're going to be doing that through our promotion strategy activation. This is when we launch the campaign website. We will have, we'll be briefing our community partners and providing them with our information packets, activating that social media campaign, again, installing our signage will happen then, preparing news media materials, so a final press packet, scheduling radio and print interviews. Most of our interviews for print and radio are usually our planning team, and Chris French has really taken the lead on most of those when we do service changes and other changes. I don't know what Shofi's plan is on that yet, but he and I will discuss that, but that's what we've done in the past. And then finalizing our event scheduling, so we're confirming even now our tabling opportunities at community events, confirming our open houses, coordinating our board member schedules for participation in presentations, and create our event staffing schedule, which is going to be really critical for arrivals and departures, because we're going to need a full force of our staff to be able to be at all of these different tabling events. And so this brings us to phase 3, which is the final push. So June and July, we'll be doing our initial outreach wave. And so this is actually launching the community survey in June. We'll begin the presentations to those community groups, and there's more on that later. Implement the first round of digital advertising, and then conduct at least 2 to 3 open houses. I'm suggesting at this point, the YMCA, the rec, we've already reserved, and Center 50 Plus, because we've already checked out that space, and we've already been talking to their teams there, so that would make the most sense. And then Dana and I both are committed to being here every month and present a monthly progress report to this board. But don't hesitate to reach out if you want before that. We're happy to tell you what we're up to. So then August and September, we're now in our peak of summer. We're going to be tabling at any summer festival and farmers market that's appropriate. Again, doing additional 3 to 4 open houses. We want to participate in national night out events. We want to present at Kaiser Greeters. And we're going to be introducing the storytelling campaign, highlighting benefits of service enhancements. What we'd like to do there is find people that either they were riders and no longer ride because they don't, maybe they moved, there's not a stop nearby, or maybe that they go to like Corbin College and we don't go out in that area. And so we do want to identify them because I think they're part of the story as well. It's the folks that would really benefit from enhancement services. We're going to launch the targeted outreach to our underserved communities, and again, present our monthly report. Then finishing it up October, November, the final round of open houses. Again, these are just placeholders right now because October and November are a little far out. We still have some time to confirm all of those. We do want to set up booths at colleges, so when students are coming back, we're able to capture that audience and get their feedback. We'll be presenting at Salem Greeters, and then focusing again from non-riders. So when we do these events, there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts. If you do an event at the Y, you're often going to get the people that are already riding Cherriots. But if you do something at World Beat, or you do something at Riverfront Park, you're going to get a much greater variety, a different, much more diverse group of people. So that's where I'm expecting we're going to find our non-riders at those greater community events and find out why they're not riding and what would encourage them to ride, what would be the incentive. And then implement our closing survey push in this month. And then we're going to begin looking at our data and our feedback compilations, and then presenting at least the preliminary information to the board, probably in December of 2025. That's where we are at this point. Any questions before I kind of touch on our community events?
Going once, going Director Navarro.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question. So why go with the rec? when you have the Kaiser City Hall and their space, it just seems like I've been in the rec, and it just seems like there's a lot more space and parking at Kaiser City Hall than there is at that location if we're trying to attract a bunch of people.
Thank you, Director Navarro. That's a very good question. What we want to do, we haven't ruled out the Civic Center at all. That is one of the places that we're looking at. One of the ideas we had about the rec, though, is almost to do what we call kind of a pop-up event, because it isn't a huge space, but it does have a diverse group of folks that gather there. And so that's another thing we're doing. We're looking at small gathering places. I think one of the things that came up with the board, and I wasn't sure which director mentioned it, was to have something that was much more intentional and more intimate. And so that's what we're trying to do with the rec.
I think just to add to that, I think if you're looking for something intentional and intimate, there's a Southeast Kaiser Community Center that's on Cherry that has a big population of folks that I could benefit from being told about the services that are provided on Cherriots.
Noted. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I just had a request, which is, and this might be also in the outreach tactics too, but, and this is months away, so it's not really an urgent request, but I would encourage you to think about how you want to engage us, because we obviously are very willing and able. Mostly, I don't know how able I am sometimes, but willing and, but we are, I think engaging us can look differently for different members of the board. And so, for example, I know, just to give you an example, I love when I have things on my calendar that I can choose and pick from. And I love having those weeks or maybe months in advance, but sometimes my calendar is that booked out. And so, so I think it just depends on, I would just think about that as we approach the months of high activity, that we kind of tailor the way that you wrangle us, because we can be hard to wrangle, and I'm sorry for that, but I also think it's something to name and think about, which I'm sure you've thought about, but just wanted to say that out loud, given that I stepped away for a few minutes, and I apologize for that, but I didn't know if that was touched upon in my time when I was out, so.
Yep. We will work with your schedules, and we will play to your strengths. That's our commitment, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So these are some suggested tabling events. So the Salem Saturday Market is an obvious one. It's a vibrant setting. It attracts a very diverse crowd of people, and so we're committed. That's a definite one. World Beat Festival, in the past we haven't participated because it was like a 3.5 day commitment, but I believe now it's only 2. And that's much more manageable, at least for my outreach team. And then Oregon State Fair, I'm not looking at the fair specifically, but the Expo Center, there's events that go on there all the time. And we've been tapped before, but it would have to be appropriate. I don't know if we want to show up when they're doing an RV show, for example. That may not be, the right venue for Cherriots, but. And then the Riverfront Park, they have the summer concert series. I think that'd be a great setting for tabling. There's the Marion Polk County Fairs. We've been asked in the past to do those kind of things. And of course, the neighborhood associations. And then there's Rotary Club, Lions Club, West Salem Business Association, and Salem City Club meetings. All, I think, great opportunities for tabling. And then Punks in the Park, we've had a lot of success with that event, not only for getting UMO signups, but just connecting with youth at risk and being able to work with them on their transit needs. Expo Negocio, that's a favorite event of my team. We love to be at that event. The Hispanic Heritage Breakfast now has expanded to the symposium. It attracts 100 influential leaders that I think that would be a great venue. And of course, the Latino Business Alliance, they meet monthly, so this is a great forum to be able to do that. So these are just some preliminary ones. There's a lot of events out there. That, again, that's why we want to keep this fluid, because if you do have thoughts, again, thank you for your suggestions. I wrote those down. Then we want to hear about them because we want to have this to be the most comprehensive, robust outreach plan going forward.
I mean, we clearly have a lot of thoughts. All right. Director Duncan.
I'm trying to be brief because I know we're over time. I'm just going to highlight two. I'm fully biased, but May Day on May 1st, it attracts over 1,000 people every year, and then Pride in the Park in September.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Fine. Well, we appreciate you making the time to just like lay all this out and really like walk us through it and accepting our feedback. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to our general manager's report.
Thank you. So just a couple of things. Let me start off with some good news. We received a nice call from a customer since our last meeting, and I think I'll just read it to you. This rider is a rider of Cherriots service for many years, and they wanted to say that with everything going on, that they hope Cherriots does not get rid of their DEI initiatives and hiring practices, and that Cherriots continue to have special buses recognizing things like Latina heritage, Black history, immigrant heritage, and many others. Just wanted to share that with you. And so earlier today, I got to spend some time with our newest transit operator class. We have 5 new operators going through training. Stole someone from Corvallis Transit, and where's the other one? So 2 transit and 3 never driven before, and so they're.
Don't say that too loudly. They might try to do the same thing to us.
No, we're better than them. So they're fully engaged and really enjoying themselves. And then from a legislative perspective, so on March 11th, the Joint Committee on Transportation hearing is Oregon Transit Association Presentation Day. I'm one of the panelists on the service provider panel, as well as there'll be a rider panel, and I think ODOT's presenting as well. So the March 11th meeting will be there. And that concludes my report.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, so on to our board of directors. Director Carney, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. I've had, like, you all have sounded a little bit like the micro machine people at times, like talking really, really fast, and then it would slow down to a normal pace. So as long as I sound okay, that's great. So earlier this week, on Tuesday, the 25th, we had the SCATS Policy Committee meeting. They talked a lot about the Center Street Bridge seismic retrofit project. And I did ask the question because there are significant detours and delays expected, including some complete closures. And I asked if transit had been coordinated with, and I believe that is something that ODOT is taking stewardship of. And Shofi, if you were at that meeting, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But the detours, when there is a complete closure on the Center Street Bridge, is, I think, Newburgh, which really would put some serious delay on our routes. But it's not closed for a long time. It's for resurfacing and seismic upgrade. We also talked about project adjustment, cost adjustment for the Verta Lane project, which is taking place up in Kaiser, doing some pedestrian and cyclist improvements as well as a realignment. And then there was an interesting item at the close of the meeting, highlighting the conversation at OMPOC, which is the Oregon MBO Consortium, to the changes the way that the feds are asking us to, practice what we do. And there is some concern or an idea maybe that our transportation improvement plan amendments, so just like the 2 projects we were just talking about, like changing the scheduling and the phasing on the Center Street Bridge resurfacing and, adjusting costs for Verta Lane, might have to go to Washington, D.C. for approval. And that is a concern. And then some other concerns just about the way the MPO interacts with the federal government and gets approval for the different documents. So like, for example, the next document that we will be submitting to Federal Highway Administration is the Unified Planning Work Program. That's out for ODOT and Federal Highway review right now, but then when we finally submit it for approval, there's a concern that there might be some delay there. So I will keep an eye on those things and let this group know what I learn. And our next meeting is toward the end of next month. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but that's all I have to report. And I'm sorry not to be there in person. You are some of my favorite people, and I appreciate the lively discussion this evening.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll start off with Director Navarro on the dais.
Thank you, President Hinojosa Presi. Not a whole lot to report. This last month started off kind of slow. What I did want to speak a little bit on, I led to this earlier this evening, was the event that was hosted at a school in my area, because I sit on the committee for the Cummings Neighborhood Family Council. During that event, we had over 400 families that attended. And this was just an event that was hosted by the teachers and the principal and the administrators of the school, to be able to have just a family night where they could hang out. We took in surveys. We talked to them about issues that impacted them. Transportation was one of them. We fundraised, the committee did, to be able to hand out raffle prizes, and we gave out 3 bikes to families to get them into just being more active in the community. And it was my bad that I didn't invite you guys, so sorry. But for the next one, we would love to have you guys there to talk a little bit more about transit and how those families can engage there. And next month is the State of the City with Mayor Clark, and looking forward to being at that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Director Holmstrom?
Thank you. I was pleased a couple weeks ago to be a special invited guest of the DEI subcommittee, so thank you very much for having me. And I don't know if you want to have me again or not, but I appreciated you allowing me to come and share my points of view, and I think it was a good discussion. So following up on that, last week we had a community advisory committee meeting, relatively short, pretty much just a kind of a round table of folks and kind of whatever they wanted to bring. And one thing I found interesting, one of our members is sight impaired, and she was saying that young people that maybe are born with a sight impairment or have a sight impairment, there's a number of camps that are available for young people that are sight impaired, and they're able to go and learn things and enjoy like an outdoor experience that may be more difficult for them just because of their impairment. But there's very little of that for people who are older, for adults. And in Oregon, there's one of the very few places in the country, is my understanding, that is a camp that's built for sight-impaired adults. And it's outside of Mount Hood. I know, right? It's really cool. And it's really neat. They have a whole garden that they put together that is a sensory garden, has all different senses that people can experience, whether you're sighted or not. And it's just really set up really well, and people are able to go and have great experiences in the outdoors, camping, having adventures, even if they're not able to, they have sight impairment. So, just kind of a tidbit that I picked up there, but it sounded like a really great thing. She gave some information about it. It's interesting. So. That's all I have to report for this week. Thank you, or this month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm totally going to jump the line here just to say that the Trailblazers also rolled out this like sensory board, so that way like sight impaired folks can follow the game, and it's all tactile. And I thought that was really nifty, and I really appreciate our community's commitment to making sure that everything is accessible to everybody. Now with that, Director Duncan.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm going to try to keep it brief because we're over time. So, DI subcommittee, we continue to discuss the CIC bylaws. Basically, just we talked about maybe a work plan, maybe a joint work session, hopefully trying to incorporate the committee better into the things that we do. And I really appreciate your attendance and advocacy and insight. It was great. Yes, you will be invited back. We also had some updates on the bus wrap initiative. Specifically, we're coming up on our next one, which is our transit operator appreciation bus, celebrating them being the heart of our transit system. Very excited about that one. And then the ICE resolution discussion. We just began the discussion there, which you saw at the end of tonight. So that's the DEI advisory, the DEI committee. The Mid-Willamette Valley, the MWAC, which is the Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation, did not meet this month, so I have nothing to report there. But there was actually something from our neighborhood association I wanted to bring up. This is not something I normally comment on or that necessarily we even give input on, but I know that Cherriots has the ability when there's new development in an area to give feedback. And one of the things we talked about is they're going to do part 2 of the development on 27th and Marietta. For those who do not know, there is a wonderful new housing complex in that area, which is great. However, it is significantly lacking in infrastructure that makes it safe for the community to use that. When they put in the apartment complex, they put 1 block of sidewalk just in front of the apartment complex, which is great, but is lacking on either side. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with that area, the closest route is the 6, and it picks up behind the Costco, meaning there is a significant portion of unsidewalked area, leaving families largely out to dry. And there are significant amount of new families in that complex who are regularly using the bus, because I observe them with my eyeballs. And more specifically, there is a large congregation of children that are picked up on that corner, and the sidewalk is so few that they spill out into the street. So I know that is not normally necessarily our commentary for an area. Normally our commentary has to do with whether or not the bus could physically pick up there, but I have significant concerns about the safety of increasing that without doing additional infrastructure. And it sounds like the city is not going to say anything about it, so this is my 2 cents of saying we are creating a very unsafe situation right there, adding hundreds of new families without additional sidewalk to get them to the bus routes that they are taking. And I wanted to highlight that specifically, and we can talk about it more off mic, but just not just for the transit agency, but for the community, writing and can have, bringing that to the city's attention. We tend to only do improvements when people complain rather than proactively, mostly because of our budgetary limitations. But, it's appropriate to use our voices when we can. So, yeah.
Thank you. Director Laura Midkiff?
I don't really have anything by way of update. I just wanted to reiterate General Manager Pollack's comments at the beginning of this meeting, thanking Cherriots for its excellent service or effort during the storm this last month, and keep people safe and serviced is what we do. So thank you for doing your part in that. I will say, I can't comment on what Sarah was sharing directly, because I sit on the Planning Commission for the city. But I will say, generally, I learned something kind of interesting at the Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday. That was not a judicial thing, which was that almost all of our transportation infrastructure is grant funded at the city level, which I all didn't know. And that is news to me and really hard, because I think about, we submitted a couple months ago these 11 sites to improve, and that was part of a bond initiative, which is different. But by and large, our infrastructure is in that area is grant driven, and so it was just kind of shocking how, and they laid it out much better than I'm not going to try right now, but how far behind we kind of will be for a long kind of in perpetuity. And so it's just a thing to think about, and it's always important to think about ways that we can work more collaboratively with the city. Although I hear from our planners all the time that they work with Shofi and his team regularly. So thank you for doing that, and I think it's just uber important, especially as the city is entertaining its new transportation plan, and we think about things more holistically. I think that collaboration will be doubly important. So.
And I think just a slight plug that some of that money comes through our MPO, our Metropolitan Planning Organization. Director Davidson?
Thanks, President. The Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Legislative Committee has continued to meet. We have settled on what most likely will be a legislative agenda that will be recommended to the full board. It is a more narrow legislative agenda than what had previously been adopted, but it is going to most likely be recommended unanimously out of committee, which is great, and then it should be adopted by the full COG board in March. Speaking of March and the COG, the annual dinner will be March 5th at 6 p.m. at the Willamette Heritage Center. If you're able to join, it would be great to have you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hold us up for just a few more minutes because somebody's bus is about to leave anyway, and they're not going to make it. So I'm going to go ahead and take up this time and just throw a couple of dates out for you folks, and especially on my appreciation for this board for entertaining that immigration resolution, and for the staff that worked hard on it, and for our lawyer that also made sure to review it, even though we questioned it extensively. And that is, in 1986 was the last time that we had any sort of meaningful immigration reform. I know that I hear the talking point often where people like to say that it is not that hard to come into the country, but it is exceedingly difficult. The process to obtain lawful citizenship is one that is almost entirely based on a lottery that prioritizes folks coming in from countries that have low immigration rates to the United States. And in 1986, you were allowed what was considered amnesty to come into the country and gain a pathway to citizenship as long as you were in the country prior to 1982. I was not around in 1982 or 1986. My parents were. In 1975 was when my father was 17 years old and first came onto the country, walking across the desert with a gallon of water and a hope and a dream. And now I get to be that living embodiment of that hope and a dream. And I want to make sure that that's something that's available for all our immigrant communities. And so I hope that you all support us in making sure that they are protected and safeguarded and stewarded. And my last comment will just be that it is not illegal to be in this country without a status. It is simply a civil violation. And civil violations are as simple as you forgot to update your tags on your car. And I don't think that that should be an offense that sends you to a country that you might not have ever seen or haven't seen since you were 5 years old, 10 years old, and beyond. So with that, it is now 8:26. You fully missed your bus. I did. And I adjourn this meeting.